Okay, I think maybe we're live. Can you guys hear me? And yeah, I always have people, and it's funny because there are obviously people who are subscribed because they know exactly when my videos go live. As soon as they go live, there's a couple of them who will always dislike everything like immediately. It's funny. What they don't realize is they're actually helping me because of the way YouTube analytics work. So interaction's interaction, I guess. Okay, and yes, I need to remember to record this. Actually, I'm almost tempted not to record it just because it's going to be the exact same as the other cherry, and then I can keep it slower on Patreon. We'll record some of it, I guess. Okay, and actually, the microphone. Oh, my nose is so itchy. The microphone may be in a better location tonight because it's up on all of my colored pencil boxes. Okay, we are starting on the second cherry. I think we'll go ahead and do I want to do the cherry or the leaf first? I think we'll start with the cherry. So this is, I'm working on sanded paper. This is uArt 500, and it turns out I'm working on a defective one. I'm not sure if you can see this. Let me see if I can get this close enough where you can kind of see. There's waves through here that should not be on there texture-wise. Not sure if that helped at all or if you're able to see it. But point is, yes, there are waves, and it is a defect from what they told me. I contacted the company and they said in 2015 they did have a batch that didn't end so well, and looks like I got one of those. So they are sending me a replacement pack, and it's not that I can't use it, it's just that the end result has these waves that I fought with the whole time that I don't fight with on other paper. Actually, I got so frustrated with this before I knew that this was defective, I went and bought like $150 worth of Fisher 400 sanded paper, which is definitely my preference. It's more expensive and not as easy to get because Dick Blick and Cherries don't carry it for some reason, but that's like totally smooth and even, and there's never texture. So yeah. Okay, moving on. Let's find what colors I need. I'm going to start with the oranges on this and make sure my reference photo is somewhere where I can see it. It's not. Moving it over. I'm considering purchasing a bigger monitor. Right now, I think the one that I'm using is it a 24 inch? 27? I don't know. I think I could use bigger so I can more easily see what I'm doing. Okay. Let's see. If you guys want to ask questions, make sure that you're highlighting. They'll show you Joseph Fincham or Digester. I'm not sure which name he's using right now. He'll regularly show you how to highlight that. Also, if you want to check out the moderators, I've got Valerie and Dead, who also goes by Joseph Fincham. Their channels are listed in the video description if you want to see some of their awesome work. Valerie does some really cool wood burning too. Definitely something very different that is amazing. So let's go ahead and look at the right picture first of all. So I'm starting with orange for my brightest portions. You wouldn't think orange for cherries, but it turns out it's the color to go with for your light areas. And I'll layer my reds and plum colors over that. Now, you don't want to push very hard. When you're using the powder blender, if I push hard, yeah, my color will come out more bold, but then it won't blend well when I get to the blending stage. JPC13 Art asks if I prefer to gesso my paper or just use the sanded paper. When I'm being lazy, definitely prefer the sanded paper because then I don't have to gesso it. But gessoing it, once I'm working on it, I like both. I can't say for certain I have a preference one over the other than I don't like the process of having to gesso the paper. Again, I'm lazy. I just want to grab the paper and start working. So right now I'd lean towards sanded paper. You can see the way their comment or in the chat how they've got the green highlight there, teal highlight. So I can more easily see your questions. Now I've blocked out where some of my water droplets are gonna go, but I'm gonna end up blending over those. I don't need to. I mean, if I put them in the wrong place, it doesn't matter at all. So that's not something that I'm going to worry about much. Let's pull this down here. But again, when you're working with Powder Blender, do not push hard. And the links of where you can buy the Powder Blender, if this is something you're interested in, can be purchased, or they're in the video description for the UK, Canada, and the US. They're working on getting these to Australia, so I apologize to those of you who can't get it there yet. And this is not a sponsored video, but I love the product and I've ended up being friends with Aliona who invented it. But so there's that. But it is not in any way sponsored. These are my own opinions here. I've been lucky enough to talk to Aliona, who's given me a lot of tips along the way. One thing that she gave me a huge tip for, I was not spraying enough with, it comes with a product called Colored Pencil Texture Fixative. And I wasn't using this as often as you can. So I'm using Polychromos colored pencils. I wasn't using these as much, or the spray as much as I can, and so I was actually making things harder on myself. It's much easier if you spray every layer. I was turning into a whole event where I would take it outside and spray it, like when I spray varnish, because if you spray varnish, or most of the sprays, the fixatives that I have here, if you spray them inside, your entire room smells terrible for, like, I mean, it really lasts. With this, it's pretty much the equivalent of spraying hairspray. So I do have a towel to put over my nose while I do, so I'm not breathing it straight in, but it evaporates so quickly, or it goes away. So a mask would work, but I don't know where mine is right now. Jessica asks, is this right on mobile? Yes, Jessica, that is the right way to format that. Sarah Makes Art wants to know what I suggest for looking... What do I suggest looking for in a handheld sharpener? The ones that there's two that I really like. One is this one. This is the Coom long pointed sharpener. It has two stages, basically. You sharpen on one side when you get it as sharp as it will go. You switch to the other, which will bring it to a really fine point. The other are just these regular. This is also by Coom, and it's just a regular little cheapy sharpener. But both of those I really like. So you can see again, look how far back I'm holding that pencil. I don't want to push very hard at all. The areas you push hard on, you're going to have hot spots, which I can actually show you here. These little dots are because I pushed too hard. Well, part because the wave of the paper, the defective paper, but a lot of that is because I was pushing too hard. Keep a very, very light hand. Googly says, do you have any advice on how to grow a YouTube art channel? Yes, post regularly. Get on a schedule. Have, like with me, you see I've got a schedule where certain days of the week, every time that week, every Wednesday I have a video, every Tuesday I have a video. Be on a schedule so people know. If they know that you're going to have videos regularly going up, they're going to be more likely to subscribe to you. If you're just posting randomly, it's a lot harder to get subscribers. So that's one way. Another way, I actually just made a video on this, or I edited the video. It won't go up for a couple of weeks, but I will have tips on a video coming soon, more tips than what I'm going over now. But another way would be to do collaborations with other YouTubers who are new and have about the same amount of subscribers that you do. You don't want to go to somebody who has like 500,000 subscribers and expect them to collaborate with you. They're probably going to ignore you. So go to somebody else who's at about the same amount, and that's who you want to collaborate with. So I'm using this soft blender or blending tool by Pan Pastel. This actually, it says softart.com. Okay, maybe it's not Pan Pastel. Typically used for Pan Pastel. But I'm using this one to blend with the powder blender, and I want to make sure I'm using the right product. So the powder blender, if you're not familiar with it, it's just this little teeny thing which lasts forever. A little bit of this goes a long way. I don't need a lot of it. I'm going to dab some of that off. Brenda wants to know the size I'm working on. It is a 9x12. Jessica says, I know you hate pastels, but have you given pastel, going by too fast, pastel pencils a shot? Way less pushy and quality, way less pushing and quality ones can be such a joy. You know, I don't need to. I can pretty much get the look of pastels now with using colored pencils, but they're way less messy. So no, pastels and I are just not best friends. I love the look that they get, but I can pretty much do the same thing here, as you'll see now. Look at how this blends out with the powder blender. Now, this blending will not work if you're not working on the right paper, because it will absorb into regular paper. Like if I was using ungessoed Fabriano or Stonehenge, it's just going to blend in. So here, I'm not having to push very hard. And actually, before I spray this, I'm going to go ahead and get, no, I'm not. I take it back. I'm just going to spray it. Mara wants to know where the baby chicken is. He is in his cage. I don't want him around the stuff that I'm spraying. Even though it's non-toxic, birds are so sensitive to different fumes. Like, I wouldn't have him around hairspray either. So I have him in his cage in another room. He'll get to come out as soon as I'm done with the live stream. So with this texture fixative, you want to make sure you shake this so well. I'm going to end up shaking this longer than I just spent shading that in, because if you don't, you can get splatters and all kinds of things. Make sure it's really, I mean, all of the packaging for different things will tell you to shake well. It means it with this one. Seriously, make sure that it shakes well. And sometimes if you haven't used it in a while, when you pick it up and start shaking it, you won't even hear the little ball bouncing around. Shake it. If you don't hear that, you know you need to keep shaking. Art Gallery wants to know which blending tool is best as well as less expensive. I like two blending tools. They've got the little, just the little sponge applicators. They're similar to makeup sponge ones, but these ones are a little bit more, I guess, thick. I don't know how to describe it. My makeup sponges that I've had in the past, they were more foamy. These are kind of, I don't know, they're thick. These ones, the other thing that I really like, and you can get them for really inexpensive. Where did I put it? See, this is the problem when I work with all of these. I lose everything the whole time I'm working. But these blenders, these are the ones typically used, the soft blenders from, or usually people use them for pan pastels. I like those a lot too. Okay, so we are going to spray this. I'm covering my mouth for a minute, so hey, this is one way to get me to shut up. And that's it. And it's pretty much all out of the air, so I'm no longer breathing in massive mists of this. It's non-toxic, so it's not really a problem if you do. Although I did just spray my phone. Let's go ahead and wipe that off. Oh, good, it wipes right off. Good to know, because I've not done that before. Okay, I need to let that set for a few minutes, though, because I do not... once it's wet, I mean, it's not going to work. You want to let it dry. So spraying that is doing two things for me. My allergies are going crazy. I apologize. I'm going to be itching my nose all night. But what that spray is doing, there's two parts. One, it's sealing down my first layer. If I keep layering on top of layer on top of layer, the product starts to knock the pencil off the paper more than anything else. The second thing that it's doing, I mean, it's just sealing it down. But the second thing that it's doing is if you get to a point where, like here, I've started to burnish a little bit on some of these cherries. If I wanted to put more layers on there and the paper's not taking more, I just spray that and it adds texture to it, and I can keep layering, and you're pretty unlimited on how many layers you can do with this. Mara wants to know, probably too long to explain, but how did you get the cherries in the back to be so soft looking? You will see that on next week's video. But basically you just want to keep your edges soft. It's the same thing that I'm doing here, but now I'm creating these hard edges on the cherries back there. I want to fade them from one to the next, and you'll see that with the video next week. The spray melody is, it comes from brushandpencil.com. It is the same, it goes together with the powder blender. It's part of the kit, but it is the advanced colored pencil texture fixative. And it is made for colored pencil. It is the only one like that. Most of the other ones that you're going to see on the market are not meant for colored pencil, or they don't work well. There are a lot of problems with some of the other stuff on the market, whereas this one is made specifically for colored pencil and works really well. I've tried some other texture fixatives. They never did much. I was never workable fixatives, and some of those I had given up on them years ago because they really didn't do much. This stuff's amazing. Okay. Partners in Crime wants suggestions on art stores to shop at for Cyber Monday. My main two online stores that I check are Jerry's Artorama and dickblick.com. Although I have to say, every year for Cyber Monday, I never see any sales that are any, and I see this with most stores though. It seems like sales are kind of the same year round. Like when they have a sale, it's a sale. It's not like extra special on Cyber Monday. Maybe they'll have extra stuff on sale. I don't know, but those will be the two that I check. Madison Jones wants to know if I've ever done any digital art. Yes, I have, and you can see those on my website. If you look for, there's a bunny and an Iberian hound. I think it's towards the bottom of my gallery. I have a few digital pieces on there. Stolen Memes wants to know what my favorite pencils are. For colored pencil, that would be Polychromos, and especially when working with the powder blender because they work best with oil-based pencils. Polychromos and then Luminance for my more opaque pencils are my other favorites. Some Penguino, I can't say it, says, I just started drawing in graphite and I have tried drawing things other than apples, but they don't look right at all. What should I do? Draw more. If you're bad at something, it just means you haven't done it enough. Keep doing it until you're good at it. Don't think, oh, I suck at this, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm just not good. No one starts out good. You're going to keep practicing and practicing. If you're bad at drawing people, then draw more people. You can also try tracing things, you know, to practice teaching your eye to see things as they are and not how you think they are. That will help a lot too. Karen says, I'm in Australia, so I can't get the powder blender. Can I achieve similar results with mineral spirits on the same paper? Kinda. It's not going to blend the same. I mean, sanded paper, I know of other people who work on sanded paper with colored pencil without using the powder blender, and they like the results they get. It's not the same as what I'm doing here. What I'm doing starts looking more like pastels, where you get that super soft blending, or more like oil painting. You can get that to an extent, but the powder blender definitely aids. One thing you may want to check is, I know Aliona had posted on her website, somebody recently bought a lot of this. They can't get the texture fixative over there yet, but you can order stuff from the powder blender from her. It's just that the shipping's very expensive, so sometimes people will go in and buy a whole lot of them and then sell them to you guys so you don't have to pay as much with shipping. Check Aliona's Facebook page because I saw that she did have someone do that recently. And that's brushandpencil.com, or if you go to my Facebook page, I'm sure that link is in the video description. Go to my Facebook page where I've tagged brushandpencil.com. That's an easy way to find her. 1911 says, what do you think of Prisma turquoise graphite pencils? Do you prefer Faber Castel? Hands down. The Prismacolor turquoise are probably my least favorite of all graphite pencils. I still have some where I use them a lot for just kind of getting my initial outline sketches, but they tend to be scratchy and have little hard nuggets in them. So they are not my preference, but graphite is kind of hard to screw up. It's hard to have a graphite pencil that I absolutely wouldn't work with. I could create something or do a drawing with just the Prismacolor turquoise and be perfectly happy with it. I mean, like I said, graphite, pretty hard to screw up, but it is Prisma turquoise is my least favorite of the bunch. JPC13 Art wants to know if the Lyra Rembrandt pencils work with the powder blender. They do, but not as well as the Polychromos. The Polychromos seem to work the best. The Lyra Rembrandt seem to be somewhere in between the wax and the oil-based pencils where they're a little bit waxier so they don't blend as well, but there are a lot of areas on this. That color there, I've used, let's see, this guy, the violet color. I used that one and another. I've used a couple of the Lyra Rembrandt colors on here where I couldn't find that specific color with my Polychromos, but they're not my first choice. Okay, so this should be dry enough. I can go, and you can see as I do this, it's not coming off on my finger. It seals it pretty well. So let's go ahead and put another coat basically the same way. I'm going to start with my orange again. And believe it or not, this is exactly how that cherry started. It's going to get there. And I just, again, want to go very, very soft with this. Do not want to push hard. If I push hard, it won't blend well. SkullGamer4 says, have you ever heard of ProArt pencils? For the price, they're great. I'm a beginner and they're not enough high quality pencils for a beginner. They're amazing. Oops, I just hit the wrong button. I'm going to do that a lot. I personally won't use, I mean, most of those, if I've not, there aren't that many good colored pencils. It doesn't mean that the other ones aren't usable, but if they're not testing for light fast, there's just a lot of reasons that I wouldn't use certain colored pencils. So those bargain ones are ones that I wouldn't personally consider. I would rather, and I've not seen any of them work well, the few that I have tried, I would rather see a student get a handful of quality pencils than a big set of generic pencils. So, I mean, if they're working for you, go for it, but it's not something I would personally recommend most people do. HJ19, what country are you in? They ship right now. Well, it's not that they ship, but you can buy them right now from Jackson's Art Supply if you're in anywhere in Europe, really, or the UK. Canada, you can get it from, I want to say it's Delta Art. I've got links in the video description. And then, of course, the US. You can also order from Dick Blick. Dick Blick may be able to ship. I know they ship worldwide, so I'm not sure if they're shipping the spray as well or not. 22 Colors wants to know what is better, Pablo or Polychromos. I honestly only have a handful of Pablos. I'm not that impressed. I'm definitely not enamored with them as much as a lot of people are. I feel like I can get better detail with the Polychromos. The Polychromos go down smoother. The Pablos are supposed to be, and I keep hearing people argue over this, but according to Karen Dosh, Pablos are wax-based. They're not actually oil-based pencils. They're a harder wax-based, so they're supposed to be to luminance what Prismacolor Very Thins are to Prismacolor Premier. From my experience, what little I've played with them, that definitely I can see where that may be the case. I think I've got some right here. I got a few of them to try it on my next portrait, but I don't know, they're just hard and waxy, and they're not my favorites right now. But I can't honestly say I've given them enough chance to give a definite review of them, whether or not I'm going to like them in the long run. Oh, Sugar Gamer says they are graphite pencils. Oh, if they're graphite, generic graphite, like I said before, you can't really screw those up. So if they work for you, go for it. That I definitely, bargain graphite, not seeing a real problem with. Brenda says, are you using the white Polychromos in this piece? Yes, that's the only one. Well, I can't say it's the only white I'm using. It's the only white colored pencil, like pencil I've used. I'm also using, for this background here, I'm using the colored pencil titanium white. That I used where I applied it with a sponge to get some of the softness there. And where are my other pencils? People always ask, or they want to know what colors I'm using, and I'm not going to be able to tell you, and this is why. That's a lot of pencils, and that's not even all of them. I have more sitting out elsewhere. There's just a lot of them. So this is why I don't always list my colors used. The simple answer would be I pretty much used them all. I don't even know why I'm keeping these separate from the rest of mine, because there are very few that I'm not using. Yeah, the white Polychromos, it's kind of funny because I had purchased when I got my first set of Polychromos, I assumed it would be like when I had used Prismacolor, where I went through white so quickly. So I bought a whole bunch of white pencils thinking that I would use a lot of those and the black pencils. Bought a bunch of them. The black pencils are amazing. The white with Polychromos I didn't like. They're too translucent. So they really didn't work for me the way that I want my white pencils to work, so I didn't use them pretty much at all. And since using the powder blender, they work beautifully with this. That is the one white pencil that I love. Ivy wants to know if I have a favorite style or method when making my art. I pretty much do it different every time. I'm always experimenting, so I can't say that I have a favorite way. There's certain things, there's certain techniques that I'm just used to doing the same way each time, but I am usually pretty open to trying different methods. Like, for example, on this, the way that I've used powder blender so far in the past, I wasn't spraying it often. So Aliona had to set me straight and say, try spraying it more in between layers. I'd like the results better. She was totally right. Actually, I think she marked the calendar when I agreed with her that she was right. She was pretty happy about that declaration. But, I mean, I'm always trying different things because you may find something that works better. I keep having people ask about digital art. Yes, I do digital art. It's on my website. I've had quite a few questions on that one so far. I like digital art. I may do that as a live stream one day. I recently got the digital art that's on my website I did with my Samsung Galaxy Note tablet, and I love that, but it didn't record. Like, there was no practical way for me to record that. So, I didn't have any videos of that, and I'm not going to turn my channel into a digital art channel anyway, but I probably will do one or two just as a live stream, because I do have the Wacom tablet now, which makes it really easy to record my screen. Penguin No Something 45 wants to know what the difference between photorealism and a hyperrealism is. Photorealism is what I'm doing right now. It's very realistic, but when you look closely, it's obviously not a photograph. Hyperrealism, you pretty much can't, it looks like an HD photograph, and I mean, it's really nearly impossible, if even possible at all, to tell that it's not a photograph. And that's a concept that a lot of people misunderstand, because a lot of artists will say this is photorealistic, and other artists will come going on saying, no, it's not photorealistic. I can tell that it's not a photograph. Photorealism is essentially you used a photo as reference, and it's super realistic. Hyperrealism is where it's like a portrait. You see every pore in the person's skin. You see more detail than you typically would when looking at the person. So if you look up good photos of hyperrealism, it's incredible, but they're definitely different. Sarah wants to know, how do I get the double screen we see on your streams? I'm using a what is it called? OBS video editor. Hold on, I can pull it up. Yes, it is OBS. If you look that up, it's a free source editing or live streaming program, and it gives me all kinds of options for having different screens, and it's pretty convenient. Madison wants to know if I went to art school. Did it help you? No, I did not. Art school can help. Not all schools are created equally, that's for sure. I did not need to, and I don't think that it's necessary. I'm not going to say it's bad to go. I just don't think it's necessary. Most of the professional artists that I know who are successful did not go to art school. On the flip side, I know of a lot of artists who have a degree in art and work at Macy's. So, there's that. One of the problems with art schools, they don't necessarily teach what people are expecting to learn. People think that they're going to learn how to paint really well and draw really well, and that may be the case. It depends on your teacher. I know of some people who go to art school and have had wonderful experiences. I also have had, I can't even count how many of my own students over the years have told me they learned more from a month of my class than they did in the 4 years of their going to college. So definitely not all are created equally. Now I'm getting to the point where I've got a lot of layers on here, so I'm going to blend this out really soon and spray it again. Just My Thought says, what is the difference between real... I already answered that. I think there's a bit of a delay on here, so you may not have heard my answer by the time you type it again. Okay, so I'm going to blend this again. We will get my powder blender. Now, one of the things that I do, I've got a piece of Viva paper towel, and a t-shirt would work the same, but I wipe my blending tool off on it, because sometimes you'll get black on there or another color, and really it doesn't end up well when it ends up all over a light area. So we'll go ahead and get a little bit of powder blender on there, tap some of that off. You don't need very much. I'm going to wipe some of that back off on the paper towel. And then I'm going to softly go over this. I'm starting with the light and blending out. I don't really care if I get some of the dark in the light areas, because I'm going to intentionally need to do that later anyway. So I don't have to worry about being too super careful. If I need to be more careful and more controlled, then I can switch over to one of the little sponges. And these sponges, if you get the kit from Aliona's website, it's brushandpencil.com, it comes with those little blenders. Now, as you can see, it looks like I'm just knocking a lot of the pencil off. I'm going to spray it. It will seal this down, and I will keep building until I get my values and my colors as dark as I want. But don't feel like you can't get the color to stick. If it's not sticking, it's because you're not spraying your texture fixative. So we'll shake this again. Art Gallery wants to know when the recorded version is coming on this video. Not able to watch it due to the connection problems. This video will be live within like an hour or two, or not live, but you'll be able to re-watch it about an hour or two after it ends, and then the actual like full regular video will be up next Wednesday. 22 Colors wants to know is it better to use an acrylic brush to blend the colors? What? Hold on. I'm not reading that right. Is it better to use an acrylic brush to blend colored pencils using the paint thinner? I use a Taklon bristled filbert brush normally. That's my favorite for using the odorless mineral spirits. Now when I spray this, I am not just spraying right here. I'm kind of going all over the place, but I'm coming from off the page to off the page. I don't want to just spray in one little area or I'll get hot spots, which not so attractive. So what I'm doing is just kind of lightly, oh, I should move my phone this time. And that's it. We'll let that set for a minute. I'll answer some of your questions. Forgot to cover my mouth. Ivy wants to know what got me into art. Do I have any specific inspirations? I was sick a lot as a kid. I have celiac disease. We didn't know about that at the time, and celiac is an autoimmune disorder. So this one needs to air out more. So I was sick so often, I like to sit and color. I didn't really have the energy all the time to run out and play and ride my bike and stuff. That sounds really, really sad. It's not that sad. I still got to ride my bike, but I was also sick quite often. So I spent more time coloring and drawing than the average child did. And that's really where that started. I just continued with it. It was something that I always loved. CK Dunn wants to know if the brushes and sponges that I'm using work to blend with graphite too. Yeah, you could use these with graphite for sure. I wouldn't use the powder blender, but the brushes, the sponges themselves, they would definitely work. With graphite, you can use just about anything to blend. You can use a Q-tip or a piece of tissue or, there's so many things will blend graphite. That's one thing I definitely recommend. Try lots of different things. Art Gallery wants to know, what can you do for me so that I can't trust, I don't know what you're trying to ask right now. Noah wants to know if there is a difference between oil and acrylic brushes. Can I use one brush for oils and acrylics? You can use them together. I keep a separate set because the oil brushes over time tend to get a little bit more stiff. You don't want those stiffer brushes so often. Usually you want your acrylic brushes to stay nice and soft. And the other thing is with acrylic brushes, you can reuse them when they're wet. With oils, that you need to use dry brushes. If you've cleaned a brush or the water's on it, you can't go over to your oil paint until that brush is completely dry. I just find it's best to use two separate brushes. But if you look at both of my sets, I have doubles of a lot of those brushes. Stolen Meme wants to know if I've ever tried a more cartoony style. Pretty much just with the Smart Art Box. There were a few projects that I did a cartoony style. I'm kind of terrible at it, honestly. It's not something that I've ever been super interested in, so it's not something I've ever practiced that much. Whoops, hit a wrong button on the computer. Let's see, back to the questions. Come on, load. Someday I might be able, there we go, now I can see it again. Stephen OK Brush wants to know if I started with layers using OMS and then layered with additional layers in the powder spray. You could, but I didn't. This is all done with powder blender. Art Gallery says baby oil is not good, then which medium is best for blending? Baby oil doesn't ever quite dry right. It affects the paper in a way that I would definitely consider negative. I know of plenty of people who have used it. I don't like the results. And you can't go right on top of it. Like, you use OMS, it dries within a few seconds and you can do your next layer right away. With baby oil, it's not really going to dry. So you're not going to be able to layer on top of layer without potentially damaging the paper. And it's not one I personally recommend at all. Victor wants to know if I've ever mixed watercolored pencils with regular colored pencil on a piece. I have not, just because I don't own any regular watercolor pencils. But it can definitely be done. Those two mediums work really well together. Just do your watercolor first, because the watercolor pencil on top of an oil or wax base, you're going to run into archival issues where it's not really sticking long term and all of that. But if you do the watercolor first, then colored pencil works beautifully on top. Joe wants to know what I think of the uArt 500 and if I've tried any other grits yet. It's hard for me to judge right now because I got a defective batch. Mine has these wavy lines that are not pleasant. So it's hard for me to judge whether or not I really like it. The 500 grit is what they recommend from brushandpencil.com for the powder blender. They really like that one. I know of one really amazing artist who recently did a hyacinth macaw on 800 grit, and she did not like it at all. I think she's used the 500 grit and liked that better. But it works good. I mean, I'm not unhappy with my end result, and I'm going to have a better idea of how much I like it when I have a non-defective batch. That is on its way. But, I mean, the end result, this is something that I'll still be able to sell. It's not like it's ruined or terrible. I'm just fighting with those lines to make sure that they don't show up in the end. But, it's decent. I definitely like the Fisher 400 better for the sanded paper. I like it so much better that I spent a crap ton of money to order a whole bunch of sheets that were already mounted. That's coming soon. Rebecca wants to know where my studio assistants are. They are in their crate asleep right now because every time I try to record, even when I did the podcast, I used to leave them out. And as soon as I start talking, that's when they need something. They want more water, even though they have water. That apparently doesn't matter to studio assistant number one. Or they want to go outside. They want something. And so I found if I'm actually having to work, it's best to just leave them in their crate for the time being. Where are my other colors? So we'll go ahead and go on to our next one. Now, before you spray this, when I did my first layer, if I didn't like something, I could have erased quite a bit of it and pulled bits off. Once you spray it, it's not going to erase. It seals it down. And again, remember when you're using this, use a very light hand. Don't push very hard. Where are the rest of my pencils? Actually, let's go ahead and start switching over to some of these more burgundy colors. I need a more purple one. I really wish that the Polychromos had a better selection of some of the pinks and purples. I definitely felt limited through this. I mean, even though I've got the full set of 120, but those pinks and purples, they've got a decent amount, but I really struggled with getting these as bright as I wanted them to be. Ivy wants to know if I have a favorite artist or art movement. Right now, I am a huge fan of Joel, what is his name? Something. I don't remember names, so it's hard for me to answer questions like that. I can visualize or see things, and I don't really remember. I'm also a fan of some of Van Gogh's work. I don't know why he fascinates me. But yeah, most of the work that I like are things that are more realistic. Rebecca wants to know when I will be painting my little chicken. My bird paintings are amazing. Thank you. Probably soon. I got some really good photos of him, sort of on accident. I mean, I wasn't planning on I was taking reference photos for the group challenge for Patreon of some pumpkins. I was really excited with how those came out, by the way. But while I was doing it, the little chicken decided he should have his photo taken. So I stuck him on there. I was like, well, if I've got the camera out, let's go ahead and see if I can get some good shots of him. And I got some that came out really pretty. So I may end up, I know I'm going to give some of those to you guys for December's Patreon reference photos, but I may paint one of those myself too. Warrior Potato on a Unicorn, God, I love that name, wants to know if I consider the baby chicken a studio assistant since he can't be in the studio because of fumes. He can be in the studio when there aren't fumes, when I'm not oil painting, when I'm not spraying. Like he was in here this morning when I was getting my video uploaded. He was on my shoulder. So yes, I would say he is still a studio assistant. He just can't be in here all the time. But he wouldn't be able to be in here all the time anyway because my other studio assistants want to eat him. So I can't have them both out at the same time. CoStar wants to know if there's a point when you feel a student is ready to move on to colored mediums after studying in graphite. That depends on the student, and I generally would say when the student is no longer enjoying working in graphite. If it's starting to get frustrated and that student really has a lot more interest in working with color, I will sometimes start them off with color. If they just have no interest in black and white, they're not going to learn as much if it's something that they're not completely enjoying. So yeah, it definitely, I would say, depends on the student. Nicholas Edgar says, I know you like to save the wax-based pencils for last, but can you mix oil and wax-based in the same layer? Yeah, absolutely. The wax-based just don't blend out as nicely with the powdered blender. So that's why I keep them for the end. But yeah, you can use them on the same layer. It just, you're going to get different results as to how well it blends. CK Dumb wants to know if it's okay for an artist to use only graphite and never bother to use colors. Absolutely. I know a few artists. Damian May only worked, if I remember correctly, he was only working in graphite, so black and white. I don't remember seeing anything in color, but his work was phenomenal. Absolutely. Work in what you love. So I'm layering magenta over the purple. You can see I'm starting to get the more rich colors now. StolenMemes.net wants to know, what colors do you suggest for shadows and highlights? I noticed you were using a blue for the shadows. Actually, it was purple here. It depends on what I'm doing. I mean, I look at my reference photo and go by that. It's not something where I would say you would always use cool colors for the shadow or always warm. It's usually going to be the opposite of whatever your light source is. If your light source is warm, your shadows are probably going to be cool, and then the other way around. But other things can affect. It's not a 100%. Anything with art, there's never, I think, a 100% all the time rule. But that's usually the case. But mostly for me, I just go by whatever my reference photo is. And I can use the eyedropper tool. You can't see it, it's across the room. But I have Photoshop open all the time with my reference photo and then a little square. If you search Lachri eyedropper tool in Photoshop, I've got some examples where I show you how to do that. But I can use my mouse over here and just touch the area that I want to see what color it is, and it pops up on the screen so I can see it that specific color larger. But that's what I use a lot for figuring out what my shadows are. Rebecca, yes, I do think Joel Ray. I think that's who it was. Whoops, and I am on the wrong page. The problem with the touch screen is that they are super sensitive, and I keep hitting wrong buttons. Joe says, would you say to do the same number of layers between blending, whether you're using OMS or powder blender? No, there's no definite rule. It depends on what you're trying to get. So no, that would definitely depend on the situation. Joshua wants to know, can I ask tips in blending colored pencil and tone tan paper for realism drawings? Huh? I'm not sure what you're asking there. I really want to answer and help, but I have no idea what you're actually looking for there. Eric wants to know, how many hours a week do I paint or draw? Usually I would say 5 to 8 hours a night. And that's every night except I normally don't work on Friday. There are occasionally exceptions to that, but normally not Fridays. Sometimes not on Sundays too. It depends on what my schedule is like. If I can take a few hours and play Warcraft, I'll enjoy doing that on Sunday, but I don't always have time. I am not going to start reading things in Spanish that I don't know for certain what they mean. I understand hello. I don't know the other two words. So I'm going to very softly blend this. I do not have a lot of the blending powder or the powder blender on the sponge at this point. But now you can see as I do this, it doesn't look like I'm knocking as much product off as the first layers. The first layers, it's like, oh my gosh, all that work and it's all gone. It's a layering process. just like everything else. And it doesn't normally go as slow as it is here. I'm going super slow because I'm sitting here talking to you guys, but it does not need to be this slow. And it looks like we've got Conejo proposing to just about everyone. Conejo being weird, that's unexpected. Ivy wants to know the longest I've spent on a single artwork, about 40 hours. For Gastal, I'm pretty sure that me speaking whatever it is you want me to speak in Spanish is not going to heal you. I think something might be getting lost in translation there. Conejo, help. Oh, well, that's one way for him to help. Okay, so this time I'm going to remember to cover my mouth so I don't inhale all of it. I'm also going to move my phone so I don't spray all over that. I can tell you, though, when it settled on the phone, it just wiped off. It didn't hurt anything. Okay. And we'll let that dry. Cecilia says, thanks for being so inspiring. You're amazing. I just started out my website at Wix, but not sure if I need a business license when first starting out. I'm not going to offer legal advice, but most artists that I know do not have business licenses. I'm not saying you shouldn't get one, but I don't think you really necessarily need, when you're starting off, I mean, you don't. It depends, I think, on state and city, too, so you may want to look into that. But you should be fine. I mean, a lot of people sell on eBay and Etsy and everything else, and it's fine. You do have to claim your income on taxes. I know that for certain. But you'll have to probably check your local government. Eric wants to know, how did I start drawing from a few hours to that many hours? A few hours to that many hours? Oh, I'm not sure what you're asking. I listen to audiobooks and sit still for a long time. I don't know if that answers anything. I'm sorry. Nicholas Edgar, who, by the way, is apparently not a real person. Just kind of a funny story there. We had, total off topic, we had a lady in our art group who randomly, when Nick joined our group, was trying to claim he wasn't a real person and kept telling him off that he was a fake. It was the weirdest, most bizarre thing in the world. We had a banner. She'd been in the group for a long time. It was odd. There was something about him that was apparently not a real person. So I have to remind him of that regularly. Nicholas Edgar wants to know if I load my blending tool with powder blender each time I blend. Usually yes, but not always. Sometimes there's enough left over from the previous use that I don't need it. I think it just depends. It also depends if I've sprayed. If I've sprayed, then yeah, I pretty much will always reload a little bit on there. But if I've added a little bit blended, add a little bit more blended, and wasn't spraying in between, then I don't find I need to keep reloading my blending tool with more powder blender. Do I do workshops outside of Texas? I don't do workshops at all anymore. I just don't have time because the videos take over every minute pretty much always. I'm pretty much always working, and I'm always still behind on work. So no, I don't do workshops at all anymore. Carrot Man wants to know how I choose what colors for my first layers. I just look at experience, honestly. A lot of it comes down to experience. I mean, I know what my end result needs to be, and so I just kind of come from that. I mean, I know that orange is going to be here and it needs to fade out. Sometimes it's just trial and error. I try on another piece of paper sometimes and see what happens when I layer certain colors, but a lot of it is just experience. The more you draw, the easier it's going to be. There's no like magic. You can read every color theory book in the world and they may help you. It's not that those are bad things, but until you experience it, until you start practicing and mix things that you realize, wow, that didn't get the end result I wanted, you're not really going to learn. So yeah, practice and just keep doing it until you get used to it. Coolest or something electromagnet wants to know where the info on the classes I offer. I don't teach classes at all anymore. The only thing that I have, or the closest that I would have, would be through Patreon, where I've got the 1 to 2 hour long videos each week. But I don't have time. I had to cancel my local classes just because I didn't have time anymore. which was sad because I loved my students, but yeah, it had gotten to the point where I was not taking any, like I had no time at all, and my husband's schedule changed, so we wouldn't have seen each other ever. That was the one day we used to see each other, or the one day off. His day off ended up being the day I had to teach, so the only way we were still going to see each other at all during the week was if I canceled classes. Plus, I didn't have time with the YouTube videos anymore anyway. Crow wants to know if acrylic paints expire. They don't expire, but sometimes if you've got a lot of air in the tube, like you've used half the tube and then you threw it to the side for 10 years, it's going to start to dry and thicken up because that air in there will affect that. That can happen. It depends on how it's stored. Like I used to get these huge tubes of Liquitex Basics and realized I wasn't always using them faster than they would start to dry around the edge, so it was kind of wasteful for me. So I don't buy those ones anymore. Plus, it's easier to squeeze out of the tube anyway. You know, we went from Conejo last week insulting everybody to this week proposing to everybody. Weirdest person ever. Maybe not ever. You can just build and build and build until you get your color how you want. And I'm also, one of the things that makes this go really fast, see if I'm holding the pencil to the side, I get more surface coverage this way. This is not a way I would normally ever work with colored pencil because you would end up with, it just wouldn't be pretty. But with a powder blender, you want it such a light hand anyway. This way works really well. I'm being yelled at by somebody right now. Thank you for following me, person who's yelling at me. I'm not going to speak in a language where I don't know what I'm saying, though. That's just bad ideas. It's like the people who go and get tattoos that look cool but can't actually read the language, and it actually says stuff like, I'm a stupid person. I, unfortunately, did not do very well in my Spanish class. I really wish I had paid more attention, though. That is a language I would love to know how to speak better. I can understand some, but not as much as I would like. Eric Flores wants to know if Winsor & Newton oil paint gets bad. I've never had it go bad. The worst I've ever happened is to where it kind of sealed the lid. I couldn't get the cap off, but I've never ever had it go bad, and I've had that paint for a long time. Because the way those tubes are, you don't have air ever really touch it, so, and it wouldn't really dry anyway. Just because of the nature of oil paint, even with a little bit of air touching it. So I did have a student, though. She used to bring a lighter to class, which seems frightening, but she would heat up the tube, the cap, until it would twist off. That always scared me. I'm like, oil paint, flammable. Well, maybe. So, yeah, but the paint itself does not go bad. It's just a matter of if you can get the cap off anymore or not. Let's see. Rebecca says, personal question. Do you ever plan on having children? How would you do all your art and fit a child in? I wouldn't. I'm old enough that children are pretty much out of the picture at this point anyway, but I have a lot of health problems, and on my bio dad side of the family, the side of the family I don't talk to, there's also a lot of mental illness, like a lot of it, and I would not want to spread that to a child, so I would never have my own intentionally. And then because of my own health problems, I have a hard enough time taking care of myself. Trying to take care of another human being would be extremely irresponsible on my part. So no, that definitely will not happen for me. Noah Spalding says, when you buy canvases, considering you have a stash, side note, I'm watching this and playing WoW, my two favorite things. When do I buy canvases, considering I have a stash? When I run out of the size that I want. I'm getting low on my Frederick's Convexo canvases. I actually need to contact Frederick's and see if they would like me to do a promo video for them, because sometimes companies, if you contact a company, especially if it's one that you already like their products, they'll trade you for a sponsored video. But I get mine. There's a local store here called Azel Art Supply, and they're in the North Texas area. They carry Frederick's canvases for half price all the time, so you can get really good deals. But yeah, whenever I run out of a size that I don't currently have, that's when I go buy more. But I normally get them from Azel. Eddie wants to know the right way to hold a pencil, and do you have another option to fix charcoal or graphite on the paper instead of a fixative spray? What do you mean by fix? I don't want my charcoal or graphite to be fixed on my colored, like if I'm working in colored pencil or anything, I never spray something to intentionally try to seal the graphite, because sometimes you'll still be able to see that graphite. I want to be able to erase it. So I mean, I've been spraying the fixative, so mine's not going to erase at this point, but that's not the reason that I spray that. I don't want the pencil to stay permanently. The same thing if I'm working in acrylics. I don't want those pencil lines there, so I never intentionally try to get them to stay permanent. My Inktense, for example, they come with a pencil that's specifically for or so that it won't lift when you're painting with the Inktense pencils. I don't like that. I want to be able to blend that out. So I switch over to a water soluble. Where? Is it in my hand? It's not in my hand. I switch over to a water soluble pencil so that those lines don't stay. Just to give you an idea of how serious I am about not wanting my graphite lines to show up. This is probably darker than I wanted. So that I can't really help you with. I do not want those lines showing through. And one of the things that a lot of people will tell you is just use hairspray. I don't recommend using hairspray on artwork. I don't recommend using things that are not intended for artwork, because you don't know what the pH level of that is. You don't know if they're going to cause problems, yellow over time. And a lot of it always frustrates me when someone tells me, and I even had my own art teacher tell me the same, that use hairspray to seal your graphite work or as a fixative. That is such a terrible idea, because even if a hairspray, they'll say, well, I've been using this hairspray for 50 years. They change the formula. You don't know when they change it. They're not obligated to tell you that it now has a tendency to yellow, because that wouldn't matter for somebody's hair. For your artwork, that does matter. So I would never recommend using those. Totally kind of off topic from what you asked, but just information for you there. As far as how I hold the pencil, that's going to be personal preference. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to hold it. The one thing that is wrong, if your hand is like this, where the tip, you can't even see the tip of your pencil, that's a problem. Hold your pencil back far enough you can see the tip. But other than that, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. You'll often see me hold it like this with working with powder blender, but that's not something you will generally see me do when working where I'm blending with OMS, because you'll see the pencil lines too much. '74 Cry wants to know the cheapest, easiest, but good quality medium for oil paint to get. Thank you, love your work. For oil paint, I really like Winsor & Newton, their oil paint. For the medium, I like the Winsor & Newton Liquin. I think that those are very inexpensive for what you get, and that's what I generally use myself. Not because they're inexpensive, just because really they're convenient to get, and I like them well enough. So those ones I think are good. And one of the best ways that you can save money when you're trying to get a lot of art supplies is a lot of these art stores like Hobby Lobby and Michael's, if you're in the US or even Canada, they have 40% coupons. So you can save so much money using those coupons to get pieces at a time. You don't have to go get all your art supplies the same day. Go one day, use your 40% coupon, go the next day, use your coupon again. But you can save a ton of money that way and get more quality supplies than trying to save money, save the few dollars buying things full price. And then you've got, of course, Dick Blick and Cherries Artorama. If you go to their websites, their regular prices are their full prices online are generally what sales prices are at like Michael's and Hobby Lobby, so you can save money that way too. Fluffy Mad what cat? I don't know what that is. Or what that says. Just so you guys are like, why can't she say anything? The writing of the names when it's unusual, it's really tiny anyway. It's hard for me to see. So if it's not a word that I can quickly recognize, I'm not going to pronounce it right. But anyway, wants to know, have I ever tried Copic markers? I have, but I never played with, I've never given them a good chance, because I don't like that they're not archival or light fast. I never really saw a reason to get good with them. They didn't really work well for the type of art that I like to create. But now we've got the Winsor & Newton markers, the pigment markers, which are archival. Where did I put my sponge? There it is. So those ones are my, actually I'm going to use one of these now. Those ones are the markers that I like the best at this point. Tamara wants to know if I've ever felt pressure to stay in one style. This is very realistic, but you bounce from surrealism. Do you find selling your art harder if you work differs greatly? I've never had a problem with it. I've never seen it affect me one way or another. I've heard oh, that's too much. I've heard arguments where people said it's best to have a definite style, but even with mine, even with my surrealism, you can generally tell that it's mine. I mean, it's very similar all the way through. Come on, I made a mess. But I've not seen it affect anything. I'm a big fan of create what you love. If you love, in this case, working with realistic stuff and wildlife and surrealism, then do all of those things. I think it shows in your work when you're working on something that you're really interested in versus something you're not so excited about, if that makes sense. Plus, you never know. I mean, you can start to combine your styles for different things. I mean, there's times that I have super realistic stuff combined with surreal stuff. So you can come up with a very unique style just by experimenting. So I'm not a fan of limiting yourself so that you can fit within a certain title. Or I should say that I'm not a fan of that anymore. There was a time when I did very much limit myself, but for just marine life. But at the time, that's also all I was interested in. As soon as I started finding an interest elsewhere, I went ahead and shifted. Dominique Designs wants to know, how long does the powder blender last you? I've yet to go through even a fraction of mine. I mean, it's still full, and I've done 3 or 4 full pieces with it in large pieces. It lasts a really long time. A little bit just goes such a long way. I find it easier to keep a light hand with the pastel blending tool or sponge, whatever you want to call it. So I'm almost to the point where I'll put pretty much my last spray, and then we can start getting into the detail. I'm going to spray it one last time. Potato Salad wants to know, how do you get many layers using colored pencil if you don't use the powder blender or paint thinner? I don't. Those are my only 2 ways that I work in colored pencil. But basically, you use a light hand. Your paper makes a difference, but if you are blending with, if you're pushing very hard, you're not going to get very many layers. If you're using certain pencils like Prismacolor, you're limited on your layers. Like I said, burnishing, pushing hard, you'll limit. The different papers will make a big difference too. So there are a few factors in there. Penguino45 wants to know if I like watercolor, and if so, what brand. I don't use watercolor, so I can't give you any advice there. I apologize, but I don't want to give you wrong advice just so I sound smart, because that definitely doesn't make me sound smart. Eric wants to know if the Polychromos are expensive. Depends on what you consider expensive. I think that they're cheaper than the Prismacolor long run because they last you so much longer. With Prismacolor, you're constantly having to resharpen and resharpen and resharpen every time it breaks. So I think it was about, I want to say it was like $193 for a set of 120 of the Polychromos. So they weren't cheap, but definitely worth it in the long run. Okay, I sprayed too much that time. Good thing it's a non-toxic. Stolenmemes.net says, how do you tell a person no when they ask you to draw a picture of them? They always get really upset when I say no. Sometimes if you can, well, there are a few things you can do. One, draw them a stick figure. Really quick, grab a piece of paper, draw them a stick figure, and then say done. Kind of make it into a joke. You can turn it into a running joke as well. But if they get upset, then they get upset. I mean, you can't be expected to do stuff that you don't want to do or that you don't typically, I mean, if you don't do portraits at all, especially, that wouldn't make sense for you to be doing them. But I don't worry too much about it, especially like you'll get friends and family that want stuff for free. I made the mistake years ago. I was working at an animal hospital, and there was this girl, Amy, who used to go with me to the art show, or the art gallery I used to show at all the time. So we're standing there one day, and she says, I would really like a painting of a manatee for my mom. Or she was saying she wanted a surreal. I had done some paintings of where it was a whale swimming away from you, a humpback whale. She wanted a painting like that for her parents for Christmas. I said, you know what, just buy the tubes of paint, buy me a couple tubes of paint and the canvas, and I'll just do it for you. You know, you hang out with me all the time. It would have taken me a few hours, so I'll do that for you. And she goes, okay, you know, I'd really like a manatee in it because my mom likes manatees. So I'm like, okay, so I'm thinking she's going to replace the manatee instead of the whale. Then she goes on to say, well, I can't get a separate painting for my mom if I don't get a separate painting for my dad. She suckered 3 paintings out of me because I felt too awkward to go, wait, what? These days, there is no way I would let that happen. But that was the last time that I did artwork for free for somebody. That was like my final straw, never again. And I think you have to hit a point where you just put your foot down and say, I'm an artist. I can't do free stuff. That's not how this works. So I would definitely just, if someone gets offended, then they're not really your friend if they're expecting free stuff from you like that. Okay, I scrolled a few. Let's see. Rachel says, do you feel knowing art history is necessary? I feel slightly embarrassed at how little I know. I didn't start learning anything about art history until more recently, when it was like, oh, that kind of interests me. Let's read about this. I don't know that it's necessary. It's interesting, but if it's not interesting to you, I don't know what difference what difference does it make if you know it or not? I don't know. That's just me. I'm not sure if that helps you, but I'm definitely not an art history expert by any means. Part of the problem is I don't remember things. I don't remember names. So it's hard for me to carry on a discussion about art history when I don't remember the names. Like, I remember Van Gogh because I'm kind of obsessed with his almond branch painting, and I've painted so many versions of his, but a lot of the artists out there, I recognize the artwork, but I don't recognize the name. Like when I used to work at the animal hospital, I could remember the dog's name, never remembered the owner's names. I'm so bad about that. Crowstar wants to know, what if somebody wants a commission, but it's a style that you don't work in at all? I've had this happen a few times, and I tell people no. I had a friend recently, I have done several paintings of Italian Greyhounds for her, and she decided she wanted a painting of this weird car thing. It was like a off-road something that her boyfriend was into. I don't draw cars. Not that I can't. It doesn't interest me in the least. It's not something I do. I just said no. We're still friends. She wasn't like, she tried to talk me into it, but it was like, no. That's no. So that, I think, just depends on how you want to handle that. But I have no problem telling people I absolutely cannot do this. Or if it's a bad reference photo, nope, not doing it. I know the end result will not be good, so I'm not doing that. Potato Salad says, I'm doing a major artwork for my high HSC. Do you have any tips for having a really good concept? I would brainstorm. I would come up with an idea and write down another idea. One idea can lead to another idea. I doubt your first 3 or 4 or 8 ideas are going to be any good, but come up with something. I would start brainstorming things that you are kind of interested in doing and see what ideas kind of sprout from that one. You'll get different ideas will branch out from other ideas. So even if the first 100 are terrible, they're going to lead to the other ideas that may work better for you. Okay. Coffee. That should be about, let it dry a few more seconds. I'll keep answering questions while we wait for that to dry. Art with Jacob says, I use Prismacolor Premier pencils and they work great for me, especially portraits. What would you say is the biggest difference between Prisma and Faber Castel? I have a video that if you look at my Prismacolor versus Faber Castel Polychromos video, that I think covers it the best. But in general, your Polychromos are going to be your oil-based pencils. They're more translucent. They layer better. They get better detail. You're not going to get the wax bloom with them that you do for the Prismacolor Premier. The Prismacolor Premier I do like for skin tones. I do like that thicker, waxier pencil for those, in which case for me I just switch over to luminance. I like those the best, but I can see why a lot of artists still like the Prisma Premier. They do have a nice texture, especially for getting the skin tones, but for finer detail, that's when I like my Polychromos, those pencils. CK Dunn wants to know if I've ever considered doing art with liquid ink, 5 liners, or with pen. I have in the past. I never did it that often to get any good at it. Eric wants to know if coffee gets my mind racing and helps me to imagine drawings. No, actually, I would say the opposite. My best ideas come when I'm half asleep. I'm on the border of sleep and awake. That's when I get most of my ideas. Art with Jacob says, if you were wanting to start making money on art, where do you start? I think eBay is a good place. That's one of the first places I started selling. eBay, and there was a local small gallery that I sold out of for many years. But you just start listing stuff on eBay, start building a following, get a website for yourself. If you are serious about selling artwork, have a website. People do not take you that seriously if you don't have one. There's so many artists where I was like, wow, this person's kind of interesting. They're pretty good. Let's take a look at their work. Look them up online. If I can't find any information on them, I'm going to assume this person is not serious about their career, which means I don't feel like purchasing artwork from them is a very good investment. Having that website, it's like your home base. This is where you tell people who you are, you talk about yourself, you share other artwork you've done. It's really, really important. So get yourself a website, get that together, and you can have a paid version for hardly anything. With my website, which is really extensive, I pay like $10 a month. You can get that even cheaper. I love my hosting company, so I have no intention of ever changing. I'd rather pay extra to have the services they provide for me. But get a website going. Then again, there are free sites that you can go with as well. If you don't want to pay Wix, Weebly, there are sites out there that you can go with. I don't think they're as professional, but it's better than nothing. But get that website and start listing stuff on eBay. CC Heavenly Portrait says, how do you reply to people who you think that don't deserve as much as other artists in your skill range just because you have no college art or degree? I go shopping and laugh that I can go shopping and they can't because they have to go work at their McDonald's job. Is that really mean? There was a place that I was teaching and I was the only teacher there that did not have a degree. Yet I was the teacher that they usually wanted on stage. I had the most teaching experience is the thing. There was another girl who had a degree in art and she constantly wanted to throw that in people's face. She currently works at Macy's, last I checked. And so it's kind of like, well, I'm actually making a living as an artist. I have worked very hard to get here. Whereas a lot of artists think if they get a degree, then they're just made, they'll have their career. And it doesn't work that way. You have to work super hard to make a living as an artist. And I know so many who were very cocky about that degree, but, you know, that job at Macy's or McDonald's, not as impressive. I mean, you work where you've got to work. It's not that those are things to be embarrassed. It's embarrassing to work at those jobs. But to get a degree in art doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make it as an artist. You have to do a lot of work to make that happen. Tomorrow wants to know what I am doing for Thanksgiving tomorrow. I'm working and cleaning my apartment. We're not doing anything because of my husband's schedule. I'm not even sure if I'm going to cook. I will probably be eating leftover salad. Exciting, huh? Catherine says, I use the Liquitex Basics too. For the best blending results, should I use a canvas with more tooth? No, you should use a canvas with less tooth to get more blending. Warrior Potato on a Unicorn wants to know if I will ever do any of the Walking Dead fan art. I'm not sure on that. I don't watch that show that often because it starts giving me weird dreams, and I have a hard time sleeping because I keep wondering what's going to happen to the character. It's not that it's too scary for me. It's that you get so emotionally attached to those characters and you know they're all going to die. So I don't know with that one. We'll see. 74 Cry wants to know what the best paper for colored pencils. My drawings always seem messed up. That may or may not have to do with the paper. It can be your technique. But my favorite, if I'm working with OMS, Fabriano Artistico Extra White Hot Press 140-pound watercolor paper is my favorite. I also like some of the Stonehenge, only the ones sold in the individual sheet, not the ones sold in the pad. The pad is too slick. For working with powder blender, I really like either the sanded paper or gessoed paper. And if you go to my website under supplies, I have a list of all of that there, so you can easily see links to the stuff that I'm using. Let's see, I have many unfinished drawings. I know I need to just knuckle down and finish them, but something stops me. How do you keep motivated to finish paintings when you aren't happy with them? And I clicked the wrong button again. As long as my original drawing, my outline is correct, I will finish it. Well, I have to. I'm on a schedule. I don't have time to start over. I have to have this video finished, or this piece finished tomorrow, so that I can have the videos done, so that the video itself is ready by Monday, so I can have it approved by the person who's promoting the graphic stock. Anyway, I'm on a schedule is the point. So I don't have time to just throw it away and not finish something. And it's probably been a really healthy thing for me, a really good way to get me to stick to that. Being on a schedule is one of the best things I think you can do as an artist. And it's one of the things that we hate the most, because I know most of us do not like schedules at all. When I first talked to the network that I'm on with for YouTube, they told me they wanted me to get on a schedule. I hadn't been on anything close. They said, ideally, post at least once a week. It's like, what? I cannot commit to one video a week. There's no way. Now I do like 5 a week, 6 a week. But that we don't like schedules. I get it. But we need to. We need to set those for ourselves. If we can keep to that, I think that it's one of the best ways to make sure that we keep on track and produce as much work as possible. What pencil do I want? I need a brighter, this one should work. My color here is dull. I need to start brightening this up, so I'm going to take this lighter orange. And I need a purple color. This, let's see. Decisions. Actually, this guy may help some. Yep, that'll help. Valerie says, I just saw your video on how to price paintings. Since I like your advice, but it seems expensive since I'm not that pro. Where could I begin to search for other artists like me to compare prices? eBay may be a good place to look. eBay or Etsy, see what people are charging there. So this color here, this is sky blue. It is such a pretty pale blue. And I'm mixing this over where the light is hitting here. Ultramarine Blue wants to know, when you use powder blender, is the finished look matte or glossy? It is matte. It's just like colored pencil normal. Catherine says, I know you like the Frederick's canvases. At times they are too expensive for me. Is there another brand of canvas that you suggest for practicing? For practicing, I used to use the Hobby Lobby generic ones. They're not ultra smooth. What did they call it? Maybe they did call it ultra smooth. The problem with those and with a lot of the generic is that they tend to warp. But if you're just practicing, it's probably going to be okay. And those are less expensive. So that may be an option, some of those generics. I don't like the generic, like Aaron Brothers has their generic canvas, and the only way they're even worth buying because their prices are so freaking outrageous. Aaron Brothers, they're actually owned by Michaels, but that place, it's like, you just know you're going to pay way too much. But their canvases are regularly like buy 2, get 3 free or 70% off, and all of these deals, because it's the only way worth buying. Their prices are actually a lot higher than Frederick's are usually, unless you get one of their massive sales, which is the only way people would buy them. But with those canvases, they're a bit too rough. They only have the one texture. I'm not a huge fan, and I've had some massive problems with theirs warping. But that's one, I mean, I would definitely say not all generics are created equally. The Hobby Lobby generics were probably my favorite for the price. But I stopped using them because of the problems that I ended up having with them. That's also what pushed me to swearing off everything but Frederick's. Eric says, have you ever had a big ego about being an artist? You know what's funny? That's actually a really good question. I think my biggest ego was when I first started. I thought I was the best. This is my style. This is as good as I'm ever going to get, but I'm pretty dang awesome right now. Was not at all. And what knocked me off the high horse was seeing Jaime Jimenez. He was going to the art center in Pasadena. He worked at the animal hospital, or the back end of the animal hospital. He bagged dog food for Canada, but at the time while going to school. But he came in and he showed me his work. Everyone's like, oh, you're an artist, so's Jaime. Here's Jaime's work. Oh my gosh, I suddenly realized I wasn't even, not even a quarter as good as what I thought I was. I saw his work and it was so realistic. It was like, wow, I'm never going to achieve that. I'm never going to be that good. And it definitely was the best wake-up call for me because it made me start to push harder, to realize I had that I'm as good as I'm going to get, and I thought I was pretty dang awesome. And it just was a huge wake-up call that I can improve, I can keep improving. And I used to spend my lunches, we would hang out. We'd sometimes go to bookstores and look at art books and stuff. And he taught me a lot just in changing my attitude alone on how I looked at stuff and that I could do better, that I could improve. He never made me feel bad about what I did, but it was just, I just definitely learned a lot, and it helped humble me a lot in realizing, wow, I always can learn. I can always do better. Wherever I'm at in my art career or my art journey, I can always do better. I can always learn more. And I definitely did not view the world that way before I met Jaime. So that was, yes, I definitely was way full of myself back then. It was a really, really good wake-up call, very humbling. I'm not keeping up with the live stream. Who are you currently engaged to? He's changing his mind on who he's asking to marry him like every 2 minutes. Conejo, if you guys do not know this, the ink erasers that I have from Faber Castel that you'll see me occasionally use, these I have because of Conejo. He actually sent me, whoops, and now I threw it on the floor. He sent me a bunch of them, and then I loved them, so I would just, he would order them for me, send him money, and he'd order some for me. So we have him to thank for my love of those erasers. Crowstar says, how do you submit for the art group challenges? If you go to our Facebook or Google Plus pages, and if you go to any of the group challenge videos, the links for those are below or in the video description. But if you go to those ones, you can just, the information is in the groups for how to submit. So you can see I'm not just jumping into black, I'm building up with all of these colors. And I will use black, but I'm using a lot of colors along with that. I don't want this to be too flat. So even here in these areas where I've got a lot of the black, it's actually got blue and red laid in with it. Where is the black though? I do need that. Oh, there it is. Do I critique watercolor? Yes, I do, because I'm really critiquing the style and the end result. I don't have to be able to teach you how to use watercolor to be able to critique it. It's kind of funny. I had a couple of people complaining today about when they heard what the wait list was for my critiques, because it's like 2 years right now, and saying how I should stop, or, you know, that's ridiculous and blah, blah, blah. The thing is, those critiques are not necessarily just for the person who submitted for critique. Those critiques are intended to help those who are watching, because the problems that artwork may have had, or the advice that I'm giving, can help another artist with where they're at right now. Those critiques are not for the individual who submits it as much as everyone who watches it. Half the people who submit I don't even email people to let them know when I had one of their videos go live. If they don't see it, it's not that big of a deal to me. It's everyone else who's learning from it. So it was kind of funny, but I had a couple of people complaining to me for that one today. I actually got powder blender spilled on my table here. We'll just pick it up on that. I'm going to blend this out one more time before I start some details. And I'm barely letting this blender touch the paper. I tried using paintbrushes to blend this, but I found that it just pretty much knocks. I mean, you can do it for some techniques, but for the most part, the paintbrush just knocked the product off the paper, and I didn't like the end result. Oops. Okay, let's start cleaning up these edges and getting some detail in there. So one of the things that is really important with this, I need this cherry, right now it looks like these ones. I need this to look like it's up close, like it's in your face, whereas these ones are out of focus. So I need to make sure that my edges are super, super clean. And to do that, I've got to rework those edges quite a bit if I can find the pencils I was using. So I want to make sure that those lines are really, really sharp, which is not back here. I don't want sharp lines. Up here, everything needs to be nice and clean. Now these edges I won't get quite as sharp until I get the leaf in, because that will get blurred out a bit. But let's see. Let's start with, I need to get my white to be a bit brighter, and I'm actually going to use my powder, or I'm sorry, the colored pencil titanium white. You normally see me use this where I'm mixing it with the touch-up texture, but what I'm going to do is use it straight. I've got it added to this little sponge, and I'm going to get this really nice soft white highlight here. And this is how I got this soft look back here. It was with this one. It just blends and gives you this nice, soft, smudgy look. Eddie wants to know what I use to finish my drawings. I mean, when you call your drawing finished, what do you use so that people don't smudge them or ruin them, if that word works? Well, for this, I will use there's a final fixative that brush and pencil uses. That's what I use on this. Normally my colored pencils, they just get framed. This does, because it's kind of powder, I do think it needs to be sealed. But normally with colored pencils, I don't spray anything. Again, they just get framed. For paintings, obviously those get varnished. For graphite, I use a fixative spray. I have one by Krylon. I don't know how much I like that one though. I think I'm going to try out some other ones to see how I like those ones. Dominique wants to know how much pressure I'm using for the details. I am pushing much harder now. When I get into these details where I'm not going to blend it out, this is where I go ahead and push harder, and this is where I can also switch to my wax-based pencils if I want. Z Wing says, I have tried Liquitex Basics, but I find the colors dried up darker, different than when it was wet. Do you have this issue? And if so, how do you get around it? When you varnish them with a gloss varnish, it'll bring those colors back to where they're just as vibrant as they originally were. It's just because they dry fairly flat. Once they're varnished and you get that gloss, everything becomes bold and vibrant again. You just need to put a gloss varnish over them, and I like the one that Liquitex makes the best. Okay, let's see. Pencils. What do I need? I need white for these droplets. I'm basically using the same colors that are on the cherry. I'm just using darker colors, or the darker ones, and pushing harder. Now for this, I am going to start using the long pointed sharpener, which is this guy here. And when you sharpen this, you're going to do it first in the first side, sharpen it till it won't sharpen anymore. And you can see you get this really long point with a nub on the end. Then I'm more gently in the second side going to go ahead and sharpen that. And now I've got this super, super fine point. This one's pretty sharp, so I'm not going to bother with that yet. Have I seen the new Prismacolor pencil ad? No, I have not. Are they trying to do damage control by chance? I really wish they would improve their quality, because there are some things that I like about the pencils, but I refuse to give them money as they are. Do I think that it is best for a person to Experiment with different art materials and styles, even if you aren't the best artist. Of course, because you're not going to know if you like a certain style or a certain medium if you don't try it. Tomorrow wants to know if I recommend working from the background forward, even in colored pencil, and why. I recommend working on in whatever way is interesting to you. If you're interested in working on the foreground first, go for it for colored pencil, because it doesn't matter with colored pencil. You can work on any area. You don't have to worry about it blending or drying like you would with acrylic paints. But for acrylics, then I definitely recommend going more with the background forward, just because of the way that layering process is. I like working on the background first because once I get the detail done, I'm not going to have any interest in doing the blurry background. I lose interest, and then I don't put as much attention into the background as I should. So if I get my background, the part that I consider more boring, done and out of the way first, I'm more likely to be serious about it and not start rushing things. Once I get onto the foreground, now my interest is renewed because it's the new part, and again, I'm more likely to end up with a better result than when I work the other way around. But that's just for me personally. Rebecca says, I bought some Polychromos, but now I am scared to start using them. As I've never done anything with colored pencils before, what kind of subject would you suggest starting with? Try flowers. Like roses, I think are really good because you've got a lot of detail in there, but they're fairly forgiving. I mean, if you draw something kind of wrong, no one's going to know the difference. So I think that roses are one of the greatest things to start with for any medium when you're getting used to it. Fiddle Joel wants to know, for colored pencil, would paint thinner be okay for blending, or should I get the mineral spirits? Well, what kind of paint thinner? I wouldn't use something that you bought at the hardware store. I made that mistake before, trying to use hardware store quality. What was it? Linseed oil. That ended badly. But the odor, it's not expensive. Odorless mineral spirits are pretty inexpensive. I just recommend going with those because I've been using them for so long. I know that the results I get, I like. So I'm not personally willing to try something else, and I don't want to recommend something that I don't know for certain is going to work well for you. Blank Blank wants to know if my art has ever been stolen. I had a lady claim that her son bought her a disc. I found out she was selling my artwork on prints and stuff up at a dog show in Washington. And what she didn't know is because I have show dogs, that means I am likely to hear about it from show dog friends. So she, actually that is not where I want that. I'm going to blend that one out. Move over, don't want you. So see how forgiving this stuff is? I love it. I just totally changed my mind on something I had done, and it's like so easy to fix. That is not so easy to do with regular colored pencils, or blending how I normally blend. So anyway, she ended up, some people took screenshots or photos of what she was selling of mine and contacted me. I contacted her. She claims that her son bought a CD of royalty-free images from some guy. And the funny thing about that is she couldn't give me the name of the person that he bought it from, or the name of the website, or the name of anything. Now, if she has the CD of royalty-free, it should have a name or information on it. So I think she's a liar. I think her son's a liar. I think her son probably stole it from her. He badly photoshopped out my watermark, and he did it to a lot of artists who were creating Italian Greyhound work. And so when I called her out on it, she was like, well, I'd like to make a deal where I can go ahead and pay you royalties, work with you so that I can keep using your work on pillows and stuff that she was selling. I said, that's great once you provide me with the name of the person who sold you the CD. And she never did it. She says that her son wasn't getting back to her. She made up some bull lie. I knew she was lying. But either her son had stolen it and she knew, or she stole it. I'm leaning towards her son did it, and she was trying to cover for him. But yeah, she backed off quickly though, because you just send them a cease and desist letter, and that usually will scare most people into stopping whatever it is they're doing with your artwork. Can I get as vibrant colors just by using the colorless blender, or do you advise using solvents? I like solvents, but I used to use the colorless blender, and you can definitely still get stuff very bright. The end result is going to look different, but as far as the colors being bright, I think that you can definitely do that with those too. Okay. So I'm just looking at my reference photo to get a general idea of what areas need to be dark, what areas need to be light. And I don't even, like right now I'm pushing really hard. I don't even care if I accidentally go too hard and realize it's the wrong color. Worst case scenario, I spray my texture fixative over it, bring the texture back or the tooth back, and then go back over it. Everything sticks on top. I mean, look how well the white shows up over different areas. It's even here. Look at how that shows up. And this is the white Polychromos, which is one of the most non-opaque white colors. It's great. And what I'll do for the really like that dot, I'm going to want an even brighter part in the middle. I'm going to mix my colored pencil titanium white, this guy, with the touch-up texture, that mixture you guys have seen me do, with it, and then paint on the really bright portions. Elise wants to know how I clean my brush after oil painting. Look up Lachri and how I clean my brushes. There's a video for that I actually show you how. And before people jump all over me, oh my gosh, you wasted so much water. First, not in a drought here, or I wasn't at the time, so there was no wasting water. Second, I am filming a video. I can't keep turning off the water in between how I normally would when I normally clean my brushes, so I had someone today giving me crap for that. You wasted so much water. It wasn't a drought when I did it. We actually had a huge flood here, and they can only store so much water. Plus, I was just making a video. I always want to ask people when they get on me about that, do you ever wash your car? Because I don't, and, well, I should say my husband doesn't, even though I'd like him to. I'm pretty sure that wastes a lot of water if we really want to go into water wasting. I'm cleaning brushes. It'll be okay. I don't like how heavy that line is. No big deal. Just soften that out like that and brighten up the white next to it. Yay. It just makes me, I can't even get over, it feels more like oil painting when I work with the powder blender and the texture fixative, because I can layer on top of layer. If I completely screw something up, doesn't matter. I can work over it. Whereas you can't always say that normally when working with colored pencil. Fiddle Jill says, when working on portraits, for example, I see many people doing the background first. Why do you start with the background instead of the subject first? For me, I usually, especially when painting, start with my background, because if, like with a portrait, you're going to need wisps of the hair to go show up over the background. It makes sense for me to get that background done first so that when I get to the hair, I can make the wisps go over the background without having to get out of order in how I'm painting that. Okay, what's next? Let's go another dark one. I'm lining that with the darks, and then get some highlights on here. I'll also want to put a lot of dots for the little teeny sparkles. I'm not going to put as many as the reference photo had, but I do want to put a lot. Look at dots. Dots in colored pencil with white, just dotting. That's still like, even though I've been using this product for, gosh, when was it, like February or March, April? I don't know when the first time I was. Every time I do this, I'm still like just fascinated with how easily you're able to get certain details that were always so difficult before. Wolf Song says, do you have a certain store you like to buy art supplies for, or do you prefer to shop online for supplies? I don't drive, so shopping online is just way more convenient for me than waiting for my husband to have a day off and take me where I need to go. So usually I like to get stuff online. You get better prices anyway in most cases. So I usually shop with Cherries or Dick Blick. And you get a bigger variety too, because even those stores, if you go to Dick Blick in person, they only have so many supplies in stock. They've got a bigger selection online. So that's just me. Someone wants to know where I get my hair done. I dye it myself, if that helps. JPC13 Art says, will you ever do a Lyra Rembrandt versus Prismacolor video, because I'm trying to decide between the two? Probably, but I don't have plans in the very near future to do it, but I should do one. I don't know. Mostly, I would say I like the Lyra Rembrandt, that's actually what I'm using now, better, but there are certain things like detail, it's easier for me to compare with the Polychromos. I like Polychromos better than both of them. But between the two, I'd probably go with the Rembrandt over the Prismacolor, but I think, I don't know, that may be personal preference. I do need to do a video comparing the two, though. I don't know why I haven't yet. Kind of glad you brought that up. I should probably find one of those. Best 140 cold press paper, Fabriano or Arches. I don't use cold press paper at all. It's too much texture. I don't use any mediums where that would actually be a good choice for me. So I can't tell you. So now as I start pulling this pink, it starts looking really bright. Oh, much better. That lays so nice over the orange. So Fiddle Jewel thanks me for doing the water droplet. She is currently working on working on a subject that has beads of sweat on her forehead. When I do the water droplets, they're really, really simple. I'm underlining, I'm creating a dark area on part of it, and then doing a highlight. But basically, I'm using the same exact colors that I used on the cherry or whatever the subject was. If I were working on a person, I would use the same colors I used on their skin tone, because you're just getting highlights, your darks and shadows, basically. You're going darker and lighter than whatever color is already there. So hopefully that tip will help you too. Marie wants to know how many pieces I do in a week. Usually one, unless, I mean, occasionally I'll do like the Smart Art box. So that was an extra painting I did last week, but it's just a little one. But normally I do one serious. Kaneho says he's not a sass. I would agree with that. The sass, I don't think would be the word I would use to describe him. Smart sass, could we go with that? Okay. Let's get some more bigger droplets in here. We've got a highlight under this one on the bottom, so just a little bit of that shine, and then I've got to come back underneath with a shadow. There's a coyote or something howling outside. That is always I don't know why their howls are just super eerie to me. Wow, it's going crazy out there. And then underneath that, I'm going to come back under, just a thin line for that. I like the water droplets. All these little details are fun. They look kind of ridiculous when you've only got a few of them, but as you start to add more and more, it starts to really look cool. Schizoid wants to know if I have any plans to do more water-soluble graphite videos. It's funny that you asked that, because I was just thinking about that today. I was looking for something else in my art storage thing, and I came across those and was thinking, hey, I need to do these again. Those were fun. I so enjoyed working with that medium. I don't know why I haven't done more. They are definitely fun. So yes, I do want to do more with those. I don't know when. I have a lot. I actually need to. Derwent sent me their new. They've recently redone their graphite pencil, so I'll be doing I wouldn't even say a review, because I think that would be considered more promotional, since they gave it to me. But I will be doing that sometime in the near future too. So I'll have to do those first. Mona wants to know, do I know any well-known artists on YouTube? I think it depends on what you mean by well-known and how I know them. I mean, I've spoken, Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter, she's, I think, pretty well-known. I've spoken with her. I love her business tips. She's got some great business tips. She does a lot of crafts, really fun crafty things. So, I mean, I've not met her in person. I've spoken with, let's see, Lena Dania is really cool. I've talked to her through email a couple of times. Jason Morgan, of course. But see, I don't know what you guys would consider well-known. Cosmic Fox wants to know who or what inspired me to make my YouTube channel. That was actually also Jaime Jimenez, who gets credit for a lot of my art career or decisions that I've made. But I was doing in progress photos and trying to make like little, I forget which website I was using, like, I don't remember. But I was making these in progress, like little strips where it would scroll through my photos beginning to end of a painting. And he said, hey, you should record yourself painting. And I learned long ago, if Jaime suggests to do something, it is definitely best that I just go ahead and do it because he's got the best advice ever. So I went ahead and made a video. And my goal, the reason that I did it, I was trying to make my website more interesting so that people would want to spend more time looking at it. And I thought having videos of the artwork in progress would be entertaining. And so that's why I started the channel. I had no intent of, I didn't even know you could subscribe. I didn't know that was a thing with YouTube. So I had a lot to learn, that's for sure. Eric wants to know if I do collaborations. Occasionally I do. Jason Morgan and I have been talking about doing something. Oh, we just haven't done it yet. Time is an issue. But yeah, I do occasionally do collaborations. I did one with Splintered Tree Studio. I forget. I have the worst memory ever. He does these amazing spray. The way he does stuff with stencils, it's freaking incredible. But yeah, I do occasionally do collaborations. They're time consuming to coordinate, so I don't do them often. CC's Heavenly Portrait says, I am getting ready to move about 15 hours away from my current location. It has taken 8 years of building a client base here. Any ideas on restarting in a new area? Basically what you did before is what you're going to do now, but a lot of your client base should be online, so it shouldn't really matter when you move. I did have a hard time when I moved from California to Texas because I had to start my student pace over again. Obviously those aren't being done or weren't at the time being done online. That was before videos. But I don't, pretty much whatever you did before, but start incorporating, if you're not already incorporating online sales, that's really where you want to be pushing in addition to selling stuff on in person. But I would go hit up any local galleries, see what art shows that are going to be in the area, get involved in anything like that you can. Check with the City Hall. Like for Frisco City Hall, I've got some artwork in there, in the City Hall actually. That was a really great one to get my stuff in front of people because a lot of people go to the City Hall. It's also like City Hall / part of the building. If you go off to one side, you can go into the library and then the rest of it is the City Hall. But a lot of people go through there. I got most of my sales online. I've never done much in person besides the one gallery I showed at. Tamara wants to know if I'm using Derwent Chinese White for the water droplets. No, I am actually just using my Prismacolor. Or, I'm sorry. I am definitely not using Prismacolor. I am using my Polychromos white. This guy just gets to such a better a better tip than my other pencils. So for this, I think it is just perfect. Shayna wants to know, how did I go from starting out making a few videos on YouTube to doing it full time? I signed up, or they got me to sign up, a YouTube network, and they were the ones who told me, hey, you need to be doing this, or, you should be on a schedule, do at least one video a week. And it just built from there. I just slowly kept adding more and more and more videos over time. I never saw that becoming a full-time thing. That was a surprise for me. Catherine says, in colored pencil, do you tend to like going light to dark or dark to light? It depends on what I'm doing. There are times where I will go dark to light. There were some birds that I did, Harris hawks, if you look at that video. On many of their feathers, I worked dark to light. It made more sense to start with the darker gray and then add white, which gave me a lighter gray. But if I need something to stay really, really white, really light, then I'm going to go light to dark. With Powder Blender, however, I can easily go dark to light depending on what I'm doing. It's much more like how would I paint. Eddie says, where can I sell my pieces online and how can I do it? I'm a beginner at selling stuff and I'm not really sure how to do it and be successful. My drawings are great, I promise. That's what they all say. No, seriously though, eBay I think it is just such a good way to get started. You can do Etsy too. I liked eBay. I was more successful with eBay, but I keep saying that a lot. When I'm not thinking, I'm really good at not saying a lot when I do my videos normally, but when I'm trying to draw at the same time, I keep doing but, I need to stop. Okay, see, I said it again. Needs to be removed from my vocabulary right now. But you can those online stuff, things like eBay and Etsy, I think are really good ways to get started on selling. And eventually you can, once you build up a fan base that way, if you've got your own website, you can sell through your website too, and build up your social media following, build up your Facebook page so that when you do have a new painting for sale, you may get the sales that way, or you can send people back to your website. But getting the fan base through social media is one of the most effective ways to get sales in the first place. Amber says, what is the largest piece you have done and how long did it take you to complete? I love your work so much. Murals would be the biggest. I did what year was that? I want to say it was year 2000. Something for the LA County Fair. I forget. It was something like 70 something square feet or 700 square. I don't know. It was freaking a lot. They were huge. Like, each panel was bigger than the wall in my studio. They were so big, so many of them. There were backdrops for something or another. So the murals would be the biggest. That was the biggest by far. I've also painted full walls in like large houses, the living room. I painted ceilings, so those were really big. But as far as a canvas, I think a 36 by 48 is the biggest canvas that I have here. I could be wrong on that though. I don't remember. I've painted so many things. Every once in a while, I'll come across a painting that I did years and years ago that I completely forgot about. So there may be something else. Noah Spalding says, when you are blending your subject with a mop brush, how do you keep paint from blending over the edge of the subject? Part of it is practice and control. Part of it, you can get a piece of, what is it? It's like masking tape, but not frisket, and cut it out for the section that you want. And when you're working your brush, it sticks onto there, but it's a really low tack tape. Let's say I taped over these cherries. I can blend then and be very messy, and then when I pull that frisket up, the line is completely clean. So the frisket is a really good way. That's how I started when I was blending with that brush, because I didn't have a lot of control to begin with. So cutting something out with frisket over the subject helped. Crowstar says, what is the difference between drawing something that sucks and you need more practice and when you're not happy drawing that subject? I don't even know how to answer that. I'm sorry. I think I'd need more time to think about that because I don't think I'm reading that right. What's the difference between drawing something that sucks? I can't even begin to answer that right now. That seems like a question. If you want to send it for my frequently asked questions, if you go to my website under the frequently asked questions page, there's a section where you can submit a question. That one I think is one I need to put more thought into because I don't think I'm reading that right. Fiddle Joel says, I had trouble getting my white pencil to go over charcoal drawing. Is there anything that would work for adding white over charcoal if you need to? I've never done it. I just erase anything that I need to be white or leave that blank. So I'm not going to be much help there. Some of your wax-based pencils or Conte pencils, because they're like real waxy, that might stick. Might also depend on the charcoal itself. I think you would want to experiment. I think that would be one to scribble something on a scratch piece of paper and then try different things going over and see if it would stick. Catherine wants to know if it is worth joining a YouTube network. I have mentioned it in my video several times. I wouldn't. I don't think you need it anymore. There are things that I like about mine, so there's reasons I have not canceled, and it kind of works as a security thing, because if I have problems where things are getting reported that shouldn't be, like false monetization, false claims for different things, my network will get involved, and that is helpful. And there are a few benefits, like they've got us signed up with a royalty-free music company, so I've got tons of royalty-free music if I want to use it. They've got us signed up for a few different things that I do use, like epoxy and some things that I find to be really helpful. But I don't think that it's necessary anymore. For me, I didn't know where to start. When I started doing YouTube videos, I didn't know how to make my channel better. I didn't know how to do a lot of things, and there weren't videos out there telling people how to improve. There was actually one guy who had like 8,000 videos, and I thought he like knew everything. So I followed him for a while, but then he stopped really making anything. So now you've got videos like Tim Schmoyer. for video creators. He gives you tips all the time, several times a week. He's got videos all the time teaching us how to make our videos better, how to get a following, how to do a lot of things. So you don't need the network anymore to learn things. My network did teach me a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. And there are some benefits, but for most people, I don't think there's any real reason to be out with a network. You end up with contracts that can be hard to get out of. And like for me, one big thing is when I cancel someday, I'm sure I'll end up canceling my network. And when I do, I say I'm sure, I don't actually know that. But if I do, I have to go through about 700 videos and remonetize them. That's not going to be fun at all. So for part of it is just like, I don't even, and the longer I wait, the worse it's going to get. But I'm like, I don't even want to deal with that. But you're on a contract, and so I can only cancel once a year, or, you know, and I have to give them like 60 days or 90 days notice or something like that. Lena Daniel was actually on the same network as I am, and she was not happy with them at all for good reasons. She had some legitimate complaints about them. So I definitely understand where a lot of people don't like networks. Mine, I would say, is one of the better ones. I've been happier with mine than a lot of people have been with theirs, but they claimed that they were going to get you collaborations, they were going to do all these things, and the funny thing is there was one collaboration they tried to set up with me. It was someone who had far, far less subscribers than me, but that was fine. I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. I never heard back. I'm like, wait, what? Okay. And I've been with them since like 2012, 2013, and that is as close as they ever came to setting up a collaboration, which they promised they would do. They always make a lot of promises on what they can do for you and what they're going to do for your channel. But really, it all comes down to what you're going to do for your channel. Expecting a network to do all of these things, none of them do. They can help with certain things, like if I have questions about things, or they can give me different tips on things that I can improve on, but that's about it. But as far as growing, you know, really doing the work, that's all on you. And I think with videos like video creators, you can learn how to do it without a network. JPC13 Art says, where can I find royalty-free music? I don't know, because mine's provided for me through my network, so I'm really not sure what is out there that would be useful for you. I know Video Creators talks about some. You may be able to find some through their channel. Noah wants me to explain exactly what a network does. They are not all created equally, so they all do different things. Mostly, they take 30% of your income. I would say that pretty much sums it up. But they get involved with YouTube but see, YouTube has changed the way it is, so I don't know that it's even necessary. Before, if you had a problem, like I kept having YouTube tell me they were using something with their algorithm, whatever, not algorithm's the wrong word, but their content ID match. They were saying that my videos had music. The music that I wrote, that I played, it was actually all improv, so it wasn't even a song. Played on violin. They kept claiming that I was in violation of somebody else's copyright, that it was a copyright protected song, which it was not. It was months to get straightened out. They took off the monetization every time I'd upload a new video, all with my own original songs that are not uploaded anywhere else. It's not like the copyright claim was coming through somewhere else where I've uploaded them. They've never been played or heard anywhere else. I kept getting that happening. If I had been with my network at the time, they would have taken care of that right away. YouTube wasn't really dealing with us little guys, like they wouldn't answer. It was a long process to get them to fix it. And they eventually finally said, you know what? Nope. We're not even going to review this anymore. You're just not going to get paid for these videos. Even though it was all my content, they were wrong. I don't know why they were deciding that I was in violation of content, whatever. But the network will get involved, and YouTube is more likely to listen to them than they are us as individuals. But apparently that's changed some, so I don't even know that that's a real reason that you would want to, you know, stay with a network. But they can get involved on your behalf and help out with stuff like that. For me, mine also provides different services like Epoxy, which is a social media, kind of a hub where all my social media is on one page. And so I can respond to Facebook things and Instagram and everything all on the same page, which makes that kind of easy. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that they do. But yeah, let's see. Shayna wants to know how the income works on YouTube. How do you make money from it? Two ways. One is through AdSense. You have advertisements that play on the videos, and I get a portion of that, a very small portion. So I get paid through that. And mine actually comes through my network. They pay my network, and my network takes their 30% and then pays me 70. So I get some from that, but that's not enough to actually live off of. It's a very small amount that any of us are really making through YouTube. You'll see these reports saying how much money YouTubers are making. We're making all these, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's incredible. Most of us do not ever come close to making that much. What we make on YouTube is just kind of added bonus, but it's very rarely enough to live on its own, or in its own. Now, though, for me, Patreon is my more stable income, because you can watch my slower videos that way, and that's where my main way of making money on YouTube is. The one thing that I don't like about these long pointed sharpeners is the container to hold the shavings is super tiny. Like, you sharpen one pencil and you already have to dump it out. I don't even know why you bother having a container for it at that point. Ingrid wants to know if I have tried blending with a tortillon, whatever, I can never say that, paper smudger thingy. I use them for graphite, but not for colored pencil. They don't work well for colored pencil. And I don't even use them when I'm using odorless mineral spirits, because even with that, while they will allow the mineral spirits to blend, that's not very sharp, they will allow it to blend, it doesn't give you as much control as a paintbrush. With the paintbrush, it seems like you just have so much more control with how much pressure you're adding and all of that, so I don't use them for colored pencil at all. So you can see really sharp pencil, and now I am pushing harder as I start getting these bubbles in there, getting that pink, and I'm actually going to pull this pink onto the cherry all over the place too. We are actually at 10 o'clock already. How is it already that late? Wow. Thank you guys so much for joining. And again, thank you to the mods who have been helping. Valerie and Dead Gesture, also known as Joseph Fincham. Their channels, if you want to check out their channels, they are in the video description. Definitely check them out. Leslie wants to know if YouTube has increased my original art sales. Absolutely, because you make sales on art by people knowing who you are, and YouTube helps people to know who I am. So yeah, YouTube is one of the best things I did for my art career. JPC13 Art wants to know if I've ever tried Amino. It's a social media site specifically for artists. I have not. I may have to look into that. And I think Kaneho told me too, or told me something. Okay, I think we are done for tonight. I will see you guys next week. I have no idea what I'm doing next week. It may actually be the new graphite pencils from Derwent. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Wow, so many options. But thank you again so much for joining. Wow, Kaneho's being abnormally nice, and it's kind of freaking me out. Is a zombie apocalypse happening? Because that's not normal. I need to go out. Maybe it wasn't a coyote I heard outside. Maybe it was a zombie. Thanks again, guys, and now we have the awkward time of me trying to turn off the stream because, you know, doing this by myself. But I will see you guys next week, and the chat will be open for a few more minutes if you want to keep chatting. But bye! Have a happy Thanksgiving, too, for those of you who are celebrating. Stop streaming. That button isn't working. Stop streaming. I know! Stop streaming.